The next speakers are Dr. Gloriana St. Clair and Erika Linke, by far my most favorite collaborators from my time at the Universal Digital Library. Dr. Gloriana St. Clair is the Dean Emeritus of the CMU Libraries, and Erika is the Principal Librarian. I had the pleasure of working with Gloriana and Erika from 2000, very closely with both of them from 2008 to 2010, while digitizing the Heritage Library in Qatar. Gloriana and Erika taught me everything I know and more about Dublin Core and OCLC. We also had fun experimenting with what was a nascent to Arabic OCR and Arabic to English translation software. I'd like to turn the virtual podium over to Gloriana and Erika now.
So thank you, Ram, for your kind introduction. This morning, I'm going to talk about digital libraries from the Million Book Project to the many. I'm giving this talk on behalf of Dr. Gloriana St. Clair and myself. And I'm not going to speak about CMU alone, but really focus on the impact of digital libraries. And I might have a slightly different definition of digital libraries than my colleagues, and about Ranganathan's 5 laws of library science. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about, as I said, is we're going to review those 5 laws, because for some of you, you may or may not know Ranganathan or the 5 laws. I'm going to follow up by talking about what's happened in the last 20 years from the library user's viewpoint. And then thirdly, what's happened in the last 20 years to keep the user at the library's center. And I want to just say, when I talk about library, I don't really mean only a physical library, because if nothing in the last year has taught us, is the library is far bigger than, it's not just what's in a building, but it's what's on your screen. But first I want to say a few words about the Universal Digital Library, the Million Book Project. It was a vision to transform library content, a vision pushing at library practices of the time. And I can tell you, when we had the first introduction and rollouts to library staff about what the, excuse me, what the Million Book Project is and purported to be, you could see the resistance, the hesitancy, the lack of vision. And people thought that this vision was going to be completely unrealistic. But we know now that that vision was prescient. MVP, at least in the early 2000s, was a harbinger of things to come for researchers, creators, and users, and for those who support, inform, mediate, and assist. The promise of the Million Book Project to transform analog publications and open to the world was important to everyone, and many followed suit, as my colleagues earlier have mentioned. To name a few in the States: Google Books, Internet Archive, HathiTrust, Digital Public Library of America, and others. And as Michael pointed out, as Seamus pointed out, the proliferation of them. And worldwide, there is also a proliferation of international, regional, and national efforts to create digital libraries. So I can't see everyone, and I can't see your hands, but I don't know if all of you know who Ranganathan was. He was a librarian and mathematician in India. He was born in around the 1890s and received his library education at the University College in London. And as a librarian, after he returned to India, he held positions in Madras, Varanasi, and Delhi. So in 1931, think about this, 90 years ago, Ranganathan proposed these 5 laws about library science. Books are for users, every reader his or her book, every book its reader, save the time of the reader, and a library is a growing organism. So what do all of these laws have in common? It's all about the user, and by extension, it's about those that create and support access for readers. In the last 25 years in particular, many have said, okay, let's update Ranganathan's library laws for this era. And I've put on your screen a slide by Silipini and Fanil in 2004, a book they wrote, Reordering Ranganathan, Shifting User Behaviors, Shifting Priorities. They are not the only ones to write about this. These folks, if you know them, are from OCLC, and even now, 2014. We're now in 2021. Even this seems a little bit dated to me. So when I think about digital library, I think about more than just books. I think about archives. Many libraries have digitized their archives to great effect. There are all kinds of materials that are now digital. And let me say, today, it's all about the need for users. Yes, there's books, articles, journals, ebooks, but they are accompanied by archival collections, newspapers, pictures, experiments, videos, PowerPoints, images, sounds. Today's user is not as focused on the book as we've been. And I think that's, I'm just going to say it because it just popped into my head. Maybe it's our age, because we have a whole community of users who are coming up who have different kinds of expectations. Communication, important communication, comes out in tweets. How are we managing that? How does that become a resource? So for today's information users, researchers, and libraries, the many include content types, collections, platforms, rules of engagement, if you will, and different literacies. As I've noted, much of the content and the output in the past, that's how people communicated their ideas, communicated their insights, communicated their research. But now, with the challenge of many, there are far more ways to share research and scholarly outcomes. And the data on which people derive their work is far more than just books and journals. There's reuse of data, there's digital humanities, the use of network analysis to use that data in new ways. So with the books, ebooks, journals, articles, technical reports, code, data sets, software, presentations, newspapers, tweets, experiments, personal and project websites, archival documents. And there's probably more that some of you can mention. How is it that users, how is it that libraries manage this? As noted in other talks, there are many collections and there are many platforms that have proliferated. Information can be found in multiple places, on the web, in collections, in institutional repositories, and commercial sites. Some content is freely available, while much access is governed, some by copyright, but more often today by rules of use, which enabled the entitled and the fortunate to have unfettered access, or at least better access. Better access. This comes about because there are economics at play here, and those who can pay are sometimes those who can play. With all of these proliferation of content, Raj's notion about what is the grand challenge, does that grand challenge extend beyond books? Something to think about. And lastly, to think about content, we need to recognize that all content is not the same, and thus there are evolving literacies that undergird best use by our users, especially our new to the Academy users. And these literacies include information, which we've always had, but in fact can specifically also be connected to literacy, visual, data, numeric, media. Well, there is financial literacy, but that's another one that we need to think about. And that our users are coming in needing augmented skills to use the content well. So for libraries, even though we may be confined to a building, I would argue that today's library just thinks about itself not in a physical space per se, but in the midst of information and content. But the user remains at the center of what we are thinking about. So we've managed content types. We build collections, access to print, e-formats, sound, data, image. We implement and navigate platforms, catalogs, repositories, other digital libraries, commercial sites. And we do this to benefit the user so that when there is a question, there is a way to help navigate, assist the user in finding the kind of information that's so important. And we teach the literacies, information, data, visual, numeric, media, geographic. It goes on and on. The content as well, I want to just, the content creation, this is something that libraries have become more engaged in, not necessarily only the manager of content, but helping to create content, helping users with data management plans, deposit of their data reuse. Some libraries have created publishing platforms for books and journals so that members of their own community can publish and reach to a broader audience. And then of course, there are institutional repositories where many put in their presentations, their work products, their data, their article preprints. And if they've been allowed, if they've published in an open access publication, they can deposit a copy of it. What we've seen both here and elsewhere is the compelling need to attempt to ensure that users and researchers have the access, the content, and the requisite knowledge and skills to take best advantage of expanded content, proliferating collections and platforms, navigating rules of access, and the full fluency and literacy to use all of those resources. So with new content, new platforms, new rules, expanded literacies, how is the library responding? We have new intermediaries and partners. In the past, libraries, we had a few programmers, we had librarians, we had staff members, but in fact, we have expanded the role that library staff play, not here, but everywhere. Just peruse the job postings. Positions such as data management specialist, GIS specialist, information specialist, archivists, designers, web developers, digital curators, programmers, system analysts, metadata specialist, scholarly communications specialist. Our role with information, with the user at the center, has made a tremendous difference. We have responded by broadening the expertise of library personnel so that teams can form as needed to address the needs of users, be they in the digital humanities, be they in data science or data reuse. So for us, Million Book Project made visible a future for the, made a vision for the future possible. We remember Ranganathan for his laws and the Million Book Project for its vision. But the library is not static. As I've said before, the library user remains at the center. And the library, be it either physical or virtual or digital, is about the many, not just one format. I hope that all of us here today at this meeting and others who listen to it later are committed to walking into that future with the user at the center and the commitment to explore and produce and pursue what best access, what best digital library and expanded content means for the users and researchers that libraries and that we are committed to serve. Thank you for your attention. I promised I'd be short, and I believe I have. I don't know if Gloriana, you wish to add any comments or observations, but I'm going to stop sharing my slides now and take me back to all of you.
Thank you, Erika. So Gloriana, you're on mute if you'd like to say a few words.
I just want to add that it was a great privilege for me to be here at Carnegie Mellon when this work got started. It was an opportunity for me to take my life and my energy in places that I had never dreamed they would go before. And I hope that all of you are as excited about the prospects that we have in front of us, because as you've demonstrated in your talks, there's still a lot of work to be done to make this vision the vision that will help us to ensure a more promising future for everyone around the world.